Welcome to XSTATE channel, the channel where you can find really useful information and without the water. Okay, so today's topic is managing state in React. So in this video I want to share my own experience and comparison of different state manager. It's not full comparison, I will not compare precisely all of these managers, but I will compare that things that I think on my personal opinion are most important in state managers. So let's get started. So the first state manager is pure React state. So with this React state, it's easy to use, it's integrated in React, it can be used with higher components, custom hooks, render props, and other state managers, and you have 100% control over your state. But the problem is that it's hard to manage big data sets, long arrays, many level objects, and it has prop drilling problem. So prop drilling problem is when you have in your parent component state and it need to be shareable to some child 5 levels deep, and you need to pass all of this prop through the internal components, and that's why bad for the performance. And you are writing a lot of boilerplate code to manage, for example, your API. So to do simple API request, you need to write use hook, you need to write some fetch call. In this fetch call, you need to handle exceptions from the server, and it takes a lot of time to do simple work. So moving forward, we have React context. So React context should be used together with React state, and it removes the prop drilling problem. So you have like context provider, you can wrap it to your parent component, and you can pass in your context some object with shareable data across all of your child components, and you will not have prop drilling problem. And it can be used also together with hooks, custom hooks, render props, other state managers, for example with REDUX or with Apollo. And again, you have 100% control over your state, and you can use context also with use reducer, and the use reducer is like mimic for the Redux. So you can work with your React state like from immutable perspective with small reducers, and it can be predictable. But the minus for this, again, you're writing a lot of code for API management, and it's hard to work again with long arrays and many level objects. The next approach is old approach, and it's Redux. So the plus for this, it's that all data is in one place, it's easy to learn, it has big community, it has a lot of libs for the Redux for managing side effects like Redux Sync, Redux Saga, Redux observables for persistent state and local storage, INDEXEDDB session storage. And you can write immutable code using Immer library, and with pure functions also you can write it, and it's predictable. And the minus for this is that all data again is in one place, and it's bad to store all of the data in one big object from the performance perspective. And again, you're writing a lot of boilerplate code, so to do simple fetch requests you need to have 3 actions, you need to dispatch all of the 3 actions, you need to change some loading state from true to false to null, you need to handle errors by your own, and it takes a lot of time, and you need to cover all of this code by tests. And actually the creator of the Redux, Danny Abramov, said that it's old approach and you might not need Redux, so I suggest you to read this article if you haven't read it yet. So let's move forward. The next state manager is Apollo client. So it has large community, and Apollo ecosystem is not only Apollo client for the front end. You can use Apollo server for managing data for the microservices with Node.js. You can use Rover, you can use Apollo Federation for complex GraphQL approach. and you can use Apollo Studio and Apollo Odyssey. So Apollo is used only for working with GraphQL approach. So if you know what's GraphQL, it's a query language, so you can like write the requests by JSON-like objects, and you can retrieve data that you really need for some specific page, for some specific component. So you can manage by yourself what you need for this page, and it's really efficient from the perspective of working with server. And if you are working with GraphQL, so you have great Apollo ecosystem, and you can work really easy and fast and efficient with API response management. So it has great cache and validation mechanism. It have persist mechanism. It have optimistic updates mechanism. So optimistic updates, what I mean. So for example, you trigger request for updating some item, and you need to show your customer the result really fast, but you know that update for your item in your application takes like 5 seconds, and it's bad practice to wait for 5 seconds until the item is updated and you can show the update on the page. So you can have like optimistic update to show update before it will be happened. And you also have rollbacks. If update will failed, your UI can roll back to the previous state, to the fallback state. But the minus is that this manager only supports GraphQL, and also it doesn't support suspense mode. So in the future versions of React, it will be hard to support new React game-changing features. Next manager is Relay. So Relay has the same approach, so you can easily work with your API using GraphQL, and you can easily manage your API, and it's created by Meta company, so the same company that created React, and it has great integration in React ecosystem, and it can support latest React features, server components, suspense, and it's efficient. It has optimistic updates approach. But the minus that this is not so popular manager for the state, and it has small community, and you need to write a lot of complex things if you have some things in your code by yourself. But I really suggest you to check this one if you have a lot of GraphQL and you need to have optimized code base. And yeah, Relay is great solution for this. The next state manager is React Query. It's also API state manager, and the big plus for it is that it can be used with REST and GraphQL, so it doesn't matter whatever you use. So it has like syntax like Apollo state manager, so it has also hooks like use query and the use mutation, but it can work with simple REST. And here I added the comparison with other libs, with the Relay, with the React query, with the Apollo, and you can check precisely what you need. So check this link, really useful, and it has great cache management. You can write really less of code, and it's great for server data management, and it has also optimistic updates. But only minus that, again, suspense mode for React Query is experimental. It's not supported yet. So the next state manager is RECOIL. So RECOIL, it's new experimental feature that you can like create your own pieces of states outside of your React and share them. So you can avoid unnecessary rendering of your components. And it has concept of reactive variables, and it's easy to use. and you will have clear virtual DOM without like high order components for managing states, and it's really great. But there is a problem that it's hard to manage arrays with 5k plus elements, and hard to sync states, especially persist operation effects, hard to persist it, and it's experimental for now. So from my perspective, it's great approach for sharing some global small objects like authentication object, like some boolean flags, like small arrays, so it's great. But for the full API state management, it's not good for now. Next state manager is Focal. So it's really performance state manager, and it has a concept of FRP approach for managing states. So it uses under the hood FPTS plus RX. So it creates like small atom components, and you can share your state with small atoms with reactive state management using RX. But the minus that community is really small and it's used only in one company. You can check this company, and it's really difficult to learn. You need to know a lot of concepts about functional programming, about functor, monad, monoid, and yeah, it's difficult, and it adds a lot of wrapper components in your virtual DOM. So from my perspective, virtual DOM, it's only representation of what you see, and it's not good to add in virtual DOM some unnecessary components, because React team created hooks and created state for managing state, and you should avoid like using hooks and like component wrappers that doesn't do anything, just sharing state. Okay, so the next approach is Apollo reactive variables. So this is integrated in Apollo package, in Apollo client, and it has the same approach as RECOIL. So you can create small pieces of state of reactive variables and share them between the components. So it's really easy to learn, and it's great for solution for the small pieces of state flags, some global app objects. So you can check the link for the description. And this approach is based on the Solid.js. So Solid.js is similar approach, and it's another framework than React, but it used also JSX. And yeah, it's efficient framework for managing state. So, but again, it's not okay to use big data sets with Apollo reactive variables. Okay, let's talk about MOBX. So MOBX using observables plus proxy for managing state, and it's really efficient for working with big data sets. So you can easy to work with 5k 10k elements, and MOBX will handle it all by yourself. But the problem is that it's used decorators, and decorators are not supported by the JavaScript and TypeScript. They are all. So this can be changed in the specification, and your code base will be hard to understand. So, and again, it adds, when you're working with MOBX, you're adding wrappers of observable high order components in your React virtual DOM, and I don't think this is great idea. And the approach that you're writing mutable code with this approach, so it's performant from perspective of changing some data elements, some insert in the array or delete an item from the array, but it's difficult to test such approach. Next, I want to discuss is sharing state with local state, session storage, and INDEXEDDB. So, for example, you can have progressive web application, and you need to persist your state between the user sessions, between the user interactions, and you can use DEXIT.js for this approach. And for example, you need to sync your application, you can be offline in your application, and you can perform some actions, and after these actions you need to sync all of the state of your application. So some items that you, for example, can create in your application, some product list, some modifications, and you can use these storages for building such stuff. So it's great for storing user session access tokens, and it's great for state persistence, and INDEXEDDB especially great for storing big amounts of data, like long arrays, like lots of objects. It's like database, a real database when you can work with it. And the minus is that different browsers have different APIs for managing INDEXEDB and even local and session storage. And with Dexa.js you can use it really well, because Dexa.js supported lots of browsers. So, and the problem is it's hard to work with SSR. So all of these storages can be only used on local, not on the server side. Okay, let's move forward and let's discuss the post message mechanism for the iframes. So for example, you have great application, and in your application another application should be integrated. So you need to share the state between these apps. So mechanism of sharing state is using post message. So it's a really great approach, and I added the link that explains how post messaging works. But the minus is that it can be not secure. So if you have some application that using post message mechanism, some hacker can also integrate this iframe and can manipulate with your application, with your state. And you need to think about security really wisely. And again, you need to write a lot of boilerplate code by yourself, because post message it's only like mechanism, like simple functions, simple listeners that you can share the state between two apps. Another approach this is window custom events. So with window custom events you can share your state between your micro front-end applications. So for example, you have like big application, for example trading view site, that have a lot of charts, and a lot of data is updated, and different pieces of your web application are written on the different framework. For example, dashboard is written in Angular, charts are written in React, some sidebar is written in Vue, and you need to share state securely between them. So the mechanism of window custom events can be useful for it. But again, it's hard to work with SSR, hard to debug, difficult to use, and need to write state manager by yourself. Another approach I want to discuss is React refs. So React refs are used as usual, not as state managers, like as links for the DOM elements, for changing focus of your input, and to access it natively to the DOM elements and to do something with them. But it also can be used as a state manager. So from my perspective, it's really useful. So for example, when you have application that need to render 10k items or like 20k items, it's a lot of DOM elements, and you need to filter them. So you need to filter these 20k elements, and imagine that each element is a complex object, and you need to filter it by different object properties. So the filter operation will take a time, and you don't need to have unnecessary renders. So it's really useful to use this approach, because when you're changing your data directly with REACTIVE, your component is not re-renders, but you can use it in combination with force update and use force update hook. So it's really sounds like a crazy, but in context of working with big data sets, it really works. So it's full control on your component rendering, but you should use this approach in 0.001% of your cases, because I use it only one time when I had really big problem in performance and I need to render lots of elements. And again, it's hard to work with SSR and hard to debug and hard to understand what's going on. But it has like big plus. The next state manager is XSTATE. So it uses a finite state meshing approach. So you can write your state declaratively with configs, and in internet you can find your state visualizer and create your state with components with using visualization mechanism. And it can have declarative configs, so you can separate the logic of working with your state from your React view. And it's easy to debug, easy to test. So I added great article also that explains finite state meshings in combination with REDUX. So for example, if you have application that uses REDUX and you need to have complex state management, you can check this article. But I think that this solution, it's only great for the complex logic. So for example, you have real-time editors, and in your real-time editor you have a lot of interactions with your UI, with buttons, with your cursor, with your text, and it's really useful to use this state manager when you have lots of updates of your components, buttons, of your layout, of your data. Not, I don't mean data especially from the server, but on your local data. Yeah, let's move forward. The next approach, this is the REES, and it's great for working with async state updates with real time. And you can write declarative code, and it's easy to test, and you have big community, especially Angular guys, and it have a lot of ready to use patterns. I added the link, so please check this one. And the minus for this, that solution is only good for complex logic, the same as I think as XSTATE, and it's great for managing small pieces of state, not big data sets. So again, you can't manage a lot of data using REACT.js. You can only manage great asynchronous for your states. Do not share state like this. So I want you to know that sharing the state with window variables, it's bad, it's unpredictable, you cannot test it, it's you cannot sync state, you cannot persist it. So avoid sharing this approach, and avoid also sharing probe drilling approach, which I said when you are using this React state. And share all state with one global context, it's bad from the performance perspective. As I said, the good example, this is REDUX. And also work with big arrays in state, it's bad. So instead you can use maps with these arrays. And you forget maybe to use pagination for your state management, for lazy loading. Maybe you don't need all state at all. Maybe you only need to show your customer only some pieces of state. So think wisely about this. And forget to unsubscribe from REDUX observable. This is common approach for the REEX. So you should think about this if you are using a REEX. And the worst problem is to overcomplicate things. So you can use like super really useful approach like XSTATE, but you forget that you can use it just with pure React state and it will be more efficient. So think about choosing your state manager wisely. And do I really need for this state manager? And final thoughts, what I wanted to discuss with you. There is no ideal state manager. And you should select your state manager based on your state requirements. So for example, if you have application and you need to have efficient API state manager with GraphQL, you can use Apollo or React query or even relay. So you need to select the most efficient and state managers that really works for you. So question, can I manage state only with React state? So if you can do this, you can just use pure React state. And tip, you can use why did you render library to understand, do you have unnecessary renders when you state updating? And you can use React DevTools in Chrome. And try these simple state managers with React State. This is Zustand and easy peasy. And this is great BLOC pattern with REES article. And there is also approach how you can manage your state using React generators. Oh, sorry, I mean JavaScript generators. So it's really interesting approach and it's not used really often. But you can use your state management with closures and with generators. And React Async, this is lightweight API state manager. So try this one. Okay, so that was it. And thank you for watching this channel. So if you like this video, please click like and subscribe and you will see the new one. Thanks.